Welcome to Project Car Media, and you read that title right. I ended up buying back my Nissan 200SX SER after I had sold it, but not for the reason that you'd think. So stick around to find out why I bought the car back. Welcome back to my channel. Now, before I get into why I bought the Nissan back, I have to tell you all the crazy things that happened leading up to that moment. And it starts with getting that axle replaced. Now, if you remember in the previous Nissan video, I said that I needed to get the axle replaced because it was going bad, which is pretty bad luck. Never had an issue until right before I was supposed to list the car. So I took it back over to Peak Innovation Motorsports. They replaced the axle, which added about $275 onto the cost of the car. And so after I paid and picked up the car, it was running great. And then I got about a mile down the road and the car died at a stoplight. And it started right back up. So I thought, that's kind of odd. Then I went and had some lunch with my father. And as I was leaving in the parking lot, it died again. And it started right back up again. So I pulled it into a parking spot, popped the hood, and while it was sitting there idling, I started moving things around, touching different wires, touching different things. Like, why did this car die? It's never died before. It's always ran just fine. So what is going on? Like, I'm literally just about to list this car again, and this problem crops up. So I find out that the wiring or something to do with the mass airflow sensor, something in that area was causing the car to die. As soon as I touched the MAF plug or the MAF itself or something, wires in that area, the car would sputter and die, kind of like a really big vacuum leak. So it was really, really weird. I thought, well, okay, maybe it's just a loose wire or something. So I secured the wires so that way they wouldn't move or anything. And then I drove home. I drove about 25 minutes all the way home. No problems, car didn't die, everything was great. And so I thought that was just kind of a weird fluke, right? So I went and I drove around some more, popped the hood, jiggled some wires, nothing was happening. So I lined up a buyer, and when I went to go show him the car, I wiggled the wires in front of him, and sure enough, the car died. We went for a test drive, and it was like sputtering on the drive as well. So I told him, hey, look, I will fix this problem, and then I'll let you know. And he agreed to wait for me to fix the car because he really wanted it. So the next day, the owner of Peak Innovation Motorsports actually came over to my house and helped me diagnose the problem. But as fate would have it, we couldn't recreate the problem. No matter how many times we wiggled the MAF, the wiring, the plug, nothing, it would not sputter, it would not die. So we just kind of, took the plug off the MAF, made sure it was clean, made sure it had a good connection. We went and drove it, got it hot, tried it again, nothing. It was not having that problem. So I messaged the buyer again and I say, hey, look, I think we fixed the problem. I think there's just a loose connection in the plug on the MAF. And so he said, okay, cool, let's meet up again tonight. So we had a time set up, and later that evening, I got in the car to go down there, and I thought, you know what, like, I'm just gonna check the wires one more time just to make sure that everything is fine. And sure enough, when I touch the MAF wiring and the MAF itself, the car sputters and dies. So at this point, I'm not sure what is going on here, but I messaged the buyer and I'm like, hey, look, it's still having an issue. I apologize, but I'll fix it and I will let you know as soon as it's fixed. So the next day rolls around, and this time I'm going to dig a little bit more into the wiring. And looking closer at the wiring, I found that the plug itself, the wires coming out of it, they seem like cut or bent or something, and they're old and brittle as well. So I thought for sure the issue was the plug. So I went online, bought myself a new plug with the pigtail wiring on the end of it. It showed up about 4 days later. I cut the old plug out, spliced in the new plug, and plugged it into the MAF. And I thought, okay, that's gotta be it, because every time I touch the wiring, the car would die. So I turned the car on, let it warm up a little bit, go to move the wiring on the new plug, and the car sputters and dies. At this point, I'm really confused about what it could possibly be. I checked everything, made sure it was all good. The only thing that I could possibly think of was that the new MAF that I got from eBay, granted it's a cheap one, I mean, that's gotta be the issue. You know, that's the only other thing that really could affect that. So I decided to get an OEM remanufactured MAF for about 3 times the price of the one I got off eBay. I put in the new MAF, made sure all the clamps were tight, made sure everything was good. And when I went to go plug in the plug on this is an OEM Nissan MAF that's been remanufactured. When I went to go plug in the plug, it made a nice click. Now, it did not do that with the eBay MAF. And so I thought, you know, maybe that was it. Maybe no matter how much you push it in, maybe it vibrated out. Maybe it backed itself off a little bit and the connection inside the plug just wasn't that great. I made sure the wiring was all good. I tucked it away, made sure all the clamps were tight. I drove it around, got it nice and hot, moved all the wires, moved the MAF wiring. Nothing was happening. Everything was all good. And I'm confident that it was fixed. So this is about a week later. I messaged the buyer and I say, hey, look, I fixed the problem. I replaced the MAF and the MAF plug, and I think that fixed the issue. I'm not having any problems. And so he said, okay, great. Like, let's take a look at it. So I drive about a half an hour south to meet him. I pop the hood, I wiggle the wires. Everything's great. No problem at all. We go for a test drive, car drives great. And the gentleman ends up buying the car. And so I thought, great. You know, car is in good hands now. I can use the money to buy the next project for the channel. All was well, right? Okay, so now we're gonna get into why I bought the car back. And all this was leading up to this point. So about 8 hours after I had sold the car, I get a message from the buyer and he says, hey, look, man, I'm stranded in a parking lot. The car won't start. And I thought to myself, like you're joking with me, right? Because like the car has always started for me. It's always started. Even when I first got it from auction, it has always started, never had a problem starting. So I asked him, you know, I was like, are you joking with me or what's the deal here? So he sends me this video.
I mean, it could be it's a 5-speed, so it could be the sensor when you press the clutch in, that it's not turning over. It could be a lot of things, but.
And so sure enough, the battery turns on, he tries to start it, it does not want to start. And so I thought, I can't, at this point, I just flabbergasted, because first of all, the axle pops up out of nowhere, right? I get that replaced. Then as I'm trying to list it, the MAF issue shows up out of nowhere. Never had that issue before, it pops up. I fixed that. Now the car won't start hours after I had sold it to this guy. So basically he didn't want to deal with it and he wanted his money back. And me being a nice guy, I said, you know what, like no problem. I'll come down there, figure out what's going on, and I'll give you your money back. So I go all the way down there. It's about a half an hour away. And sure enough, the car will not start. And so I thought, okay, it's not even cranking. So that tells me it's probably the starter. So I checked the starter fuse, totally fine. I swapped the starter relay with the air conditioning relay since they're the same. Car still does not start. And unfortunately, the starter on this car is actually under the intake manifold behind the engine. So you can't exactly get to it and tap it with a hammer or anything like that to get it to start. So luckily I brought my neighbor with me and we were able to push start it in the parking lot, get it running, and the car ran just fine after that. Unfortunately, the buyer was kind of fed up with it. And so, I gave him his money back and I took the Nissan back home. So I still have it. It's still here and currently in need of a starter. And so I'm going to take it back over to Peak Innovation Motorsports and have them replace the starter. Unfortunately, again, I don't have the time really to work on it, and it's in a really tight place. And as you can tell, I have really big hands, so I just would not be able to do it, in any decent amount of time. So yeah, that's the latest on the Nissan. It's you know, after the starter goes in, I will probably be into the car for close to $4,000. I do have it currently listed for $3,500 on my local Facebook Marketplace. I've gotten some other people interested besides the person that bought it previously, so I might hit them up after the car is fixed. But I'm kind of getting a little bit scared here because it seems like every time I go to sell it, something else goes wrong. And so I'm hoping that after getting the starter replaced, I can sell it to the next buyer and they can enjoy it for a long time before anything goes wrong. I had to make a video on this because like what's been happening is like Murphy's Law at its best. When it rains, it pours. You know, it couldn't have just been one wire. It couldn't have just been a fuse. It has to be all these things that normally wouldn't be it. Basically, the moral of the story is that you just need to push forward, you know, block out all that negativity and don't give up. Do not quit. Just focus on getting it fixed and lining up the next buyer and move on so you can get to the next project for the YouTube channel. And that's kind of where I got to in my head. Next step is to get the starter replaced in the Nissan. And then after that, I will be listing it for sale again. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe because I do have some pretty cool content coming up with some new projects. And we're going to be doing some more budget restores and some track days and stuff this year. So definitely subscribe. We will see you guys on the next video.